In my previous video, I did an overview of the Canon T90. Today, I'm going to do the same thing for the camera that I used prior to the T90, the Canon A1. It probably looks like an antique nowadays, but in its day, it was quite a revolutionary camera. It came out in 1978. Prior to this, Canon had the AE1, which was a shutter speed priority camera, and the AT1, which was a fully manual camera. And just after the A1 came the AV1, which was Aperture Priority, and the AE1 program, which was shutter speed priority with a program mode. The revolutionary thing about the A1 was it had all of those modes in one body. And at the time, I don't think there was another camera on the market that offered that functionality. So if you've picked one up second hand and you're not quite sure how to use it or not quite sure what it does, this overview might help. So first things first, there's no lens on the camera. This is the Canon FD mount, and lenses came in two flavours. The first type is called a bayonet mount. So all we do to put it on is line up the red dot on the lens, red dot on the body, turn until it clicks, and now it's on. To take it off, just press the button on the lens, rotate in the opposite direction. The other type of mount is called a breech mount. And I don't have any breech mount lenses, but my 1.4 teleconverter for my FD300 is breech mount. And in a similar way, line up the red dot on the lens, red dot on the body, and on breech mount lenses, just turn the ring at the back of the lens and the other way to take it off. They're both quite easy, but I probably prefer the bayonet mount, so I just find them a little bit more convenient. Right, now I've got lens on the camera. Next thing to do is to turn it on, and we do so using this lever at the top. At the moment it's in the red L position, locked, so all the electronics are off and nothing will function. To turn it on, just move it to A. Once it's switched on, check your battery level, which can be done using this button here. When you press the button, you will see this LED start to blink, and it should blink rapidly, which it does. The reason being is that I've just changed the battery. The old battery was about 20 years old and was completely dead. To change it, just lift up this little flap and pop in your new battery. It's quite easy. You can do it yourself. You don't need to send it to a service centre or anything. The one problem you might have is actually sourcing a new battery. The battery type is PX2AL, and where I live in provincial Thailand, I couldn't get one anywhere. I thought I would probably be able to order one online or order one from Bangkok, but I couldn't do that either. And the best advice that Canon's in Thailand could sell me was to use eBay or Amazon. I asked my brother, who works in Singapore, and he got one quite easily. So the moral of the story is that depending where you live, it may be very easy or very difficult. So now we've got a lens on the camera, we've got it switched on, and we've got good battery level. And you need to ensure that the ISO setting matches your film speed. Mine does. It's 200 ASA. If you need to change it, just use a thumbnail to press in this button and then rotate the ISO dial. If you need to apply any exposure compensation, just press in this button and move this round. Okay. Next thing is using the camera. And the simplest way to use a Canon A1 is in fully automatic program mode. To do that, you need to make sure that the lens is set with this ring on the green A. That's very, very important. And then turn this lever at the top to the TV setting, which is shutter speed priority. And using the dial at the front, go around to the green P, and that's now in fully automatic program mode. So all you have to do is look through the viewfinder, focus your subject, and press the button, and the camera will decide on the most appropriate aperture and shutter speed. If you want to use it in shutter speed priority, just leave the settings where they are. Move the dial at the front to select a shutter speed, and the camera will automatically select the appropriate aperture. If you want to use aperture priority mode, move this lever to the AV, and the dial inside will change, and you'll see aperture settings instead of shutter speeds. Select whichever one you want, and the camera will automatically select the appropriate shutter speed. If you want to use the camera in fully manual mode, move this lever back to TV and select your shutter speed. And then on the lens, move this ring away from the A to the aperture you want, and then you'll be in fully manual mode. So it's quite easy really. When I first got the camera a long time ago, I thought it was quite complicated, but looking at it now, it's quite easy. There's just a few more controls that I need to show you on the camera. On this side, there are two buttons and a lever. The bottom button is just an exposure preview. So when you look through the viewfinder and press this button, it will tell you what exposure the camera is using. It does exactly the same as pressing the shutter button down halfway. And when I used to use this camera, I just used the shutter button all the time. I never use this button. The button at the top actually is an exposure lock. So you can take a meter reading on one part of the scene, press and hold this button, and it will lock the exposure, and then you can shoot another part of the scene with the previous exposure setting. That's quite useful. This lever, I don't think I ever used when I had the camera. When you meter normally, the diaphragm in the lens is fully open, so you're using the maximum aperture, so you get a nice bright image in the viewfinder. And then just before the shutter releases, the camera stops down the aperture to the aperture you require. In some circumstances, you may wish to do your metering using the actual aperture you're going to use rather than fully open. For example, you might want to check the depth of field. So with this ring off the A, you can press in this lever, and then you can adjust the aperture in the lens and take a meter reading using different apertures. The other reason you may need to use it is if you use some very old lenses known as FL or R lenses. So these lenses had the same physical mount as the FD lenses, but the internals weren't the same. So you could put them on the camera, but you needed to use this lever to use them. I think I've covered most things now. On the back of the camera, there's nothing. Digital cameras these days, the back is completely full with a screen and dials and buttons. With old film cameras, there's nothing. When you use the shutter delay, presumably you're not going to be looking through the viewfinder, so possibly some stray light could go through the viewfinder onto the film. So you can use this lever just to close off the viewfinder. It's quite nice. On cameras these days, Canon have done away with this feature, so that they give you a piece of rubber attached to the strap which you have to put over the viewfinder. It's much better to have a lever. On the bottom, there's not much either. There's a socket for your tripod. When you're ready, when you've used up your film and you're ready to rewind it, just press this button, then you can do your rewind. And this little cover gives you access to the film advance mechanism. And these electrical contacts are for an automatic film winder. Normally you have to wind the film on manually, but you can buy an accessory that will wind it on automatically. So I think that's about it. When I do these videos, I normally forget a few things. So if I have forgotten anything, just make a comment below and I'll get back to you. So I hope it's been useful. And please, as they say in the YouTube videos, like, comment, subscribe, and please come back soon for more videos.